Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We are back on the dev server, and it's time to have a look at the Vauquelin, which is a new French destroyer coming in for Rank 2 Battle Rating 4.3. One of the things I have to say about the French destroyers is I've had an absolute blast playing them, whether it is the early ones, or it is the Vautour, the Milan, and now the Marceau, and of course the Vauquelin. And for me, the guns that these things have are incredibly enjoyable to use, meaning that they are some of the funnest destroyers in the game just for that, the amount of damage that the guns do. Obviously you have a lot of the heavy hitters from America and also Britain with the crazy fire rates, but there's something just really enjoyable about using these French destroyers and just donking somebody's ammo with the very heavy APHE that they have. The Vauquelin is no different to many of the other ones. It has 5 single-mounted 138.6mm. If you played the French destroyers, you'll be used to these things. It has them in a pretty standard setup, so 2 on the back, 2 on the front, and 1 in the center, meaning that most of the time it will be easy to get about 4 of these guns on target, but getting all 5 is not going to be easy, mainly because of this gun having only really shots to here, which is going to be a bit of a problem. In terms of secondary armaments, there really isn't a lot, and this is another thing you see with a lot of these French machines. 2 dual 37s, 3 single 13.2 Brownings, and 2 dual 13.2mm Hotchkiss guns. They are swaying around the place at the back. You can see the 37s back here, and then also some of the smaller guns in the center here. It's not really going to make a huge difference in terms of AA effectiveness. Instead, they're just more there for decoration. The 37s may sound nice, but once again, there's a small amount of them, and they're these odd 37mm for the French, which don't actually have a really good fire rate. You can see there they only have a 30 rounds per minute fire rate, meaning they're firing every 2 seconds. So this isn't like a Bofors, which is bang, 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 bang. Instead, what it is quite a low fire rate kind of gun. And having only 4 of them definitely doesn't help. You do have torpedoes on this thing though, which is quite nice. They're the same torpedoes that pretty much every French destroyer has, and they're set up in an odd setup. So you have the 3 or the triple mount on the back, and then you have the 2 duals, which are in the front of the machine. This means that if you're playing arcade, it's very hard to get a torpedo reload off, because you basically have to fire 5 torpedoes on one side and then just chuck 2 on the other. But if you find yourself in a scenario where you're in the middle of everything, then it's a little bit easier, I suppose, because you can use them on both sides. It is a way to get kind of a quad setup in and also not take up as much space. You have 4 funnels on this thing with a bunch of engines in tow and fuel tanks all around, with the transmissions in tow too. And of course, for those 138.6mm, you have some pretty decently sized ammo racks with not a ton of armor on them. The thing about these French machines is you can pop the enemies, but they can also pop you. So what is the interesting thing about the 138s? Decent fire rate, good hit power, but one of the problems that they have is the targeting speed. You can see here that the targeting speed of these guns is 5 degrees per second, which is very, very rough. So being able to switch between targets takes an incredibly long time, but once you are on a target and you can use that first stage fire rate incredibly quickly, you can see for this gun it has 48 rounds. For these guns here, only 24 for each of them. It means that you can keep that fire rate up over and over again and do really well. And even if you are on the second stage, that's still around every 6 seconds, which is pretty decent if you can get the vast majority of these guns on target. The only issue with the ready-use stuff is it is quite exposed. The armor on this machine is only 16mm for the hull and 8 for the superstructure, so that will kind of nuke it, unfortunately. It does have some anti-fragmentation armor on the turrets themselves, and a little bit of rolled homogeneous on the breech, but it's not really going to make too much of a difference to the overall armor specs of this vehicle. So just to kind of give you an idea of these guns, you have the HE, a Pens 36, which is quite nice, but it has 3.41 kilos of TNT equivalent, which is super nice. Then you have a look at the SAP BC, and it has good pen for being able to deal with other destroyers, which is what you'll fight at this BR. You'll can pen 63, 59, 49, completely fine with penning pretty much all of the stuff you will. You might have a bit of an issue with the anti-fragmentation armor on certain machines, but that's an issue that a lot of people have. And it still has a very high TNT equivalent. With the Melanite, it's still 2.53 kilos of TNT equivalent, which is very, very good at the end of the day. So 138's a grand, and they work very well. The 37mm don't have a lot of pen, don't have a lot of damage, and there's also only 4 of them, so it doesn't really make too much of a difference. What's kind of cool about the Vauquelin is it doesn't just have access to the 23 DT torpedoes, which, as I said, this is like the standard torpedo that every single French destroyer gets. It also gets some mines, the B4M mud contact mines, so that's kind of nice. It also gets access to some depth charge throwers. As we've seen over the last little bit, they did do a test for submarines. Submarines will probably be coming in next year, so stuff like depth charges, stuff like mines become a little bit more useful compared to what we've seen before. The one thing to also know is with the new mechanic for mines, where you can actually just hold down the button to fire them or drop them, and it automatically will throw them in. That just makes them a little bit easier to use and means they're not as just an exposed ammo rack, which a lot of the time that's generally what happens. It does have the torpedo mode for the torpedoes to make them useful, and the improved rangefinder also helps them out. If you play arcade naval, by the way, you have some pretty big buffs to rotation speed, so things like these guns will rotate a lot quicker than previously, which will help out quite a lot. So you do also have the camouflages, the disgusting pink camouflage, the bicolor, which looks more like a tricolor, but that's probably because I'm colorblind. And then, of course, the tricolor itself with the brown and the gray, which exists on this machine. So overall, 443 France, you already have a really nice set of vehicles. You already have a pretty decent, look at them. The only one which isn't too good is the German destroyer that exists. Basically, what that one is a refurbished German destroyer, and with that means you get those 150s which don't have access to AP, which is a bit of a problem. Here's that automatic mine thing I was talking about. It literally will just do it for you, so you don't have to worry about that setup. You can also see the 37mm shots there. Not exactly something to write home about at the end of the day. So, looking at a vehicle like this, what are we looking for? We're looking to output damage, we're looking for speed, and we're looking for survivability. Survivability is incredibly low. Unfortunately, that is a bit of a problem with these things. But if you are the one to shoot first and do damage, you can hammer time vehicles very easily with the 138s, and your speed is actually pretty decent. The overall acceleration for a vehicle like this works incredibly well. So for me, I'm looking forward to this, and I'm sure many other people will as well who are familiar with the French naval forces. I would also like to say, if you are a person, but look how much damage we did just with that one set. If you are a person who hasn't tried the French forces yet, I do really recommend the destroyers. They're super fun to play, and also give you a different experience compared to many others which are around the place. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.